An issue I've had with this game since beta is the gun mechanics. 7 months ago I made a video discussing the same issue, and since then my opinion has been further solidified. Battlefront 2 suffers from having a lower skill ceiling than its predecessor, due to the prevalence of luck mechanics. I find the gunplay very unenjoyable, and think the developers should look to the Battlefield 5 gun mechanics for ways to improve this game. My main issues with the gunplay pretty much fall under two categories: bolt deviation and time to kill. The biggest problem with bolt deviation in Battlefront is the randomness. Many weapons in Battlefront 2 have incredibly high spread, particularly automatic weapons, with the biggest offenders being heavy blasters. Spread is a mechanic that causes the bolts fired by your blaster to deviate from the centre of your crosshairs. This means that although you may be aiming the reticle directly at your target, many of the shots will miss. Therefore, precise aiming is not rewarded, and an inaccurate player may still be hitting shots despite not aiming correctly. Since this spread is random, this means there is no real way to effectively compensate for it. These factors combined directly lead to the gunplay feeling unsatisfying and unresponsive, and greatly lowers the skill ceiling. It can be argued that spread is a way to balance weapons at range. However, this can be achieved with less frustrating mechanics, such as changing the weapon's damage drop-off or increasing its recoil. It could also be argued that spread can be controlled by tap firing. However, some weapons' first bolt spread is high and will miss the target anyway. Spread recovery in Battlefront is also quite slow, meaning your bursts have to be spaced so far apart that the damage per second at range becomes worthless, and you're better off spraying anyway. DICE developers working on Battlefield 5 have spoken about where you point will be where you shoot. If Battlefront 2 utilises this same concept, gunplay would be far more enjoyable. My second issue with the gunplay in Battlefront 2 is the time to kill, which has become much longer than in the previous game due to the larger health pools. The time to kill is basically double what it was in the first Battlefront, making everything feel like a bullet sponge. The ability to effectively take on multiple opponents is practically gone, since reaction time is such a small factor now. This also makes dealing with high health special units particularly frustrating, since you can land multiple headshots from behind, only to bring them down to the same health level as you by the time they turn around. The game becomes more about the health you have or the number of teammates around you than gun skill. Positioning has also become far less important, as you always have plenty of time to gain cover, and ranged combat is almost pointless to engage in with most weapons. The slow time to kill of primary weapons indirectly puts more emphasis on StarCars, as one-shot abilities like the Vanguard are able to kill so much faster than any primary weapon. Engagements end up being decided by who has their StarCars off cooldown, rather than who has the most skill. Of course, skill will always be a deciding factor in any engagement. However, adding these other factors reduce the impact and importance of skill. How valid my statement that the time to kill is longer is something that people have tried to dispute on the Battlefront forums. The longer time to kill was one of the first things I noticed in the beta, due to the huge increase from the last game. The difference is so large that I cannot understand how people can possibly argue otherwise. However, I will now provide sufficient evidence to back up the statement. In the first game, every trooper had a default health pool of 100 health. In Battlefront 2, the current lowest health pool is 150 health, with the heavy class, which is a standard infantry unit, having 200 health. In Battlefront 1, the E11 Blaster had a fire rate of 300 rounds per minute, and dealt a maximum damage of 35, which drops off to a minimum of 15 damage. This means the blaster takes a minimum of 3 shots to kill, and a maximum of 7 shots to kill. Standard assault gun behaves very similarly to the Battlefront 1 E11. Now, in order for the TTK to remain around the same in Battlefront 2, either the damage model or rate of fire has to be drastically increased. However, The fire rate has remained identical, whilst the maximum damage has increased by just 1, and the minimum damage increased by just 4, giving it a damage range between 36 and 19. This means the blaster takes 2 more shots to kill in short range, and 1 more shot at long range versus 150 health enemies, and even more against 200 health enemies. Whilst comparing 2 weapons does not show the overall TTK has changed, I wanted to initially make this comparison to show how the increased health pools and stagnant damage models have impacted gunplay. Now I will provide statistical evidence based on data from the files of both games to show that how the TTK has changed overall. Firstly, I'd like to note that the data for Battlefront 2 is not entirely up to date, as it does not take into account the recent nerf to the Blurg and SE44C's damage. The data I am using from the last game is also taken from Simthic.com, the link for which is in the description. Simthic's data takes into account the bolt speed of each weapon when calculating the time to kill. These discrepancies do not, however, affect the credibility of my proof, as both discrepancies will have little impact on the overall data, and in fact, if fully correct, the TTK for Battlefront 2 would be even longer in comparison to Battlefront 1. I will also minimise the effect of travel time by comparing the TTK at 1 meter. During this analysis, I have decided to also remove one-shot primary weapons from Battlefront 1 statistics, as I believe these would unfairly skew the results. I am also using the TTK in Battlefront 2 versus 150 health enemies, meaning many engagements will actually take significantly longer due to the heavy class having 200 health. The fastest TTK for primary weapons in Battlefront 1 is the DT-29 with a time of 202 milliseconds. The fastest TTK for a primary weapon in Battlefront 2 is the SE44C and fire rate mod with a time of 533 milliseconds. This is more than double the time to kill for Battlefront 1. The slowest TTK for Battlefront 1 is the bow rifle with a time of 820 milliseconds. The slowest TTK in Battlefront 2 is the Blurg without the burst mod with a time of 1023 milliseconds. Although these comparisons show clearly that Battlefront 1 has a significantly faster TTK for both its highest and lowest DPS weapons, these may be irregular and unrepresentative values and do not give an overview of the TTKs as a whole. The mean TTK can be calculated to compare both sets of data overall, as the calculation uses every value in the dataset to find an average. The mean TTK for Battlefront 1 is 478 milliseconds. The mean TTK for Battlefront 2 is 782 milliseconds. This is a 64% increase in the overall TTK. The mean value does have limitations, however, as it is affected by extreme values. The median can also be used as a measure of average, and is less affected by extreme values. The median TTK for Battlefront 1 is 492 milliseconds. The median TTK for Battlefront 2 is 771 milliseconds. Every comparison I have made has categorically shown a drastic increase in the TTK from Battlefront 1 to Battlefront 2. The difference is undisputable. I fully believe Battlefront 2 would hugely benefit from decreasing the overall spread of weapons, making gunplay far more enjoyable and satisfying. I cannot understand the decision to balance gunplay in this way, as I think it damages both the skill ceiling and level of enjoyment you can have. I hope this is something that can be changed during weapon balancing patches down the road. On the other hand, I can understand the developer's decision on release to not change the damage model of weapons significantly. This is because the Specialist class at launch had 100 health, and if the damage model was increased to keep the TTK against the Assault class consistent with the last game, the class would die in just 1 to 3 shots from most weapons. However, now the Specialist has 150 health, this would be the perfect time to update the damage model to something more suitable based on the high health pools. I believe this would make for more satisfying gunplay and take the emphasis off overpowered secondary weapons and star cards. Transition over fulcrum.